Hey everybody, Plushie here, and I had to re-record this intro 5 different times because I keep delaying this, and I apologize, and I thank the 3 remaining people's patience that are still waiting for this video. But there is another reason on top of my extreme laziness as to why I delayed this video, to the point that I actually made Dante's hot take before hers, which is just, she's boring. Like, she's a very solid AoE quick looper, but she's cucked by her caster class, and she has nothing interesting in her kit. That's my summary. You can actually leave if you feel like that sounds very boring. But for the people that are still sticking around, let's get into today's hot take video on Ono no Komachi. Taking a look at her base stats, her attack is actually really high, one of the highest amongst all casters, which is really important because she is a DPS and casters generally have low damage, so the high attack stat at least sort of offsets that. She has a really nice base gain of 0.8% per hit on 4 hit quick cards, a 3 hit buster card, a 3 hit arts card, and a 5 hit extra attack. So her quick cards gains a lot of MP, and her skills help with that even more, and she has 3 of them, so it's really nice. You can just focus on picking her quick cards, as a whole. I would say she probably fits better with base Scotty than summer Scotty because of this as well. And in terms of traits, she doesn't have anything too interesting. She has divinity, which has some synergies with certain supports, and in third ascension she is a goddess servant, which can also come into play in certain boss gimmicks, but overall nothing too interesting. Neutral balance alignment is a very difficult one to buff with specific supports as well, unfortunately. Her first skill is a 3-turn 20% rainbow buff, as well as a 3-turn on attack effect. Whenever she attacks with her buster card, she gives herself a 1-turn sure hit, which also applies to the buster card itself. Whenever she attacks with her arts card, she gives herself a 1-turn 1-hit evade, and whenever she attacks with a quick card, she gains 10% flat charge, and it actually applies to her MP. So whenever her MP hits 3 targets, for example, because spoilers, it's an AoE MP, it's gonna give her 30 flat refund, and all of this is on a 6-turn cooldown. So honestly, this skill is not the most exciting outside of the on-quick attack effect. I think everything else is pretty mediocre. Having a rainbow buff on a triple quick servant is pretty unoptimal, and also it's only 20%. The sure hit is nice, but she only has 1 buster card, so it's going to be really inconsistent if you want to use this against a certain boss for gimmicks. So is the arts card evade, and it's also only 1 hit. If we take a look at another character, Hakuno, who has a very similar effect, he has a bigger rainbow as well as a 1-turn evade on the singular card he has whenever he attacks, which is in this case quick instead of arts, but this skill just looks like a downgrade compared to that one, except for, once again, the on quick attack flat charge effect applying to her AoE MP. So she's gonna have really good refund because this, on top of her decent hit count, with her really good base gain 0.8% per hit, she is one of the best AoE quick loopers in terms of pure refund. So this also allows her to have some weird comp in terms of quick looping with Koyan Sky of Light and some cooldown reduction shenanigans, because this is very similar to what Saber Altar has, so she can also do something similar to that, which we'll get into later when talking about her farming. So overall, this skill, once again, underwhelming, everything else, but the on quick attack effect is nice. Her second skill is a 50 MP battery and a targetable cooldown reduction by 1, as well as star absorption boost by 5000% for 1 turn. And this skill has a 7-turn cooldown. So 50 MP battery, really nice. You don't have to unlock her Append 2 for quick looping sake, because all quick support batteries are 50. And of course, the cooldown reduction when used on herself helps her spam her skill 1, which will be important when I talk about the Koyan Light shenanigan that I mentioned a bit earlier. And also in general, just makes her skill cooldowns shorter. Her first and third skill would effectively be cooldown 5, so really nice. One thing I don't get though is why the star absorption up is targetable, because usually with these types of cooldown reduction skills you have 2 ways you can go. Number 1, to go with support, which you would appreciate if she had any other supportive effects on her skill set, which, spoiler alert, she doesn't in her skill 3 either. So, you know, this doesn't make much sense. Secondly, you can have this be selfish. We've seen this on Richard, where all of the skills buff is self-targeted, only the cooldown reduction is targetable, which is nice because you can now use it on a support, so the support can help you even more. But the absorb up being targetable means that if you want to reduce your Scotty's skill cooldown, for example, she's going to take all your stars on that turn, which is not that big of a deal. It's only one turn and you're quick. You're probably making enough stars anyways, but it just didn't make much sense to me. And the fact that the star absorption up is only for one turn also doesn't help her case as a crit skill. So overall, I think it's a fine skill because it's a 50 battery and a cooldown reduction, but not the most exciting thing ever. And finally, her third skill is a 30% MP damage up for 3 turns, an anti-undead power mod by 50% for 3 turns, anti-evil power mod for 50% for 3 turns, and anti-shadow servant power mod for 50% for 3 turns. And all of this is on a 6-turn cooldown. So this is her big damage steroid skill, and the baseline 30% MP damage up does allow her damage to be pretty nice even when not hitting traits. In terms of the traits that she hits, it's kind of unfortunate. Evil is going to be the most common, which overlaps with Tonalico, which is arguably the strongest, well, not even arguably, is the strongest AoE caster DPS in the game. Undead is usually not on servants unless you apply with Wu Zetian, and I don't think it is really worth using Wu Zetian with her unless you need a debuff cleanse or something, because she's not a very buster heavy servant. Like when you talk about Skahak, she has 100 power mod, and also her buster cards are really strong. This is a triple quick deck caster. I don't think she pairs very well with Wu Zetian, unfortunately. And Shadow Servant is just a meme at this point. It is basically a callback to Sei Shonagon. It was bad on her, it's gonna be bad on this character as well. So overall, unfortunately, pretty underwhelming skill. If she's not hitting any of these 3 traits, which usually just means she's not hitting evil, then it's literally just a 30% MP damage up. Taking a look at her passives, unfortunately, nothing too crazy. She has Item Construction D, which increases her own debuff success rate, which only applies to her MP, which I don't think is like super important. She also has Territory Creation A, which increases her arts performance by 10%, which is nice, but she only has 1 arts card. And finally, she has a special form of divinity that also gives her insta-kill immunity, which can be useful in very niche cases, especially considering she's a caster. A lot of assassins have insta-kill gimmicks, but you know, most of the time you can still just use someone like Caster Scotty to sort of bypass it unless the enemy really spams it. So this is, you know, still quite niche. And finally, her MP is an AoE 6-hit quick MP that inflicts curse on all enemies at 2000 damage per turn for 5 turns, and it also reduces all enemies heal rate by 30% for 5 turns, and it inflicts a debuff clock on the enemy that also lasts for 5 turns, which at the end of each turn it will remove 1 buff from the enemy. The MP also has a 60% chance to insta-kill. And finally, the overcharge of the MP is a MP damage up buff before damage that scales from 20% to 60% for 1 turn. So the MP itself has really decent refund because 6 hit plus 0.8% per hit, and her first skill. So all of that makes a really nice refunding MP. Outside of that though, not the most exciting. I think the curse, the heal down, and the insta kill are all like not real effects. They're basically almost never relevant, especially the insta kill. You have no way of boosting it. You can't even use it reliably in standard farming. The only interesting thing about this MP is of course the buff removal clock that she puts on the enemy. It is very slow because it doesn't remove it even after damage for the following cards in your chain. It removes it at the end of each turn, and it only removes 1 buff. Now if you're able to spam her MP against multiple enemies, which, you know, it's very easy for her, she's gonna eventually put so many clocks on the enemy that they basically get full buff stripped at the end of every turn, which sounds very good, and it is potentially very good, but I think, number one, a lot of enemies have unremovable buffs, and number two, this is really slow. If you want to reach a state of like full buff purge at the end of every turn, you'd probably have to spam her MP at least 3 times back to back, and at that time, another DPS that has some form of buff removal can probably already kill or at least break the enemy's bar. I do think one very good use of this is if you anticipate the enemy to spam a bunch of buffs after their break bar, for example, then you can use this MP and preemptively debuff them with this clock, and by the time when he starts spamming buffs, they're gonna get instantly purged at the end of each turn, which, like, once again, I think it's a powerful effect. It's just very slow. I think they're probably controlling the power level because it is an AoE MP. Ever since Amakusa, they haven't really printed a true full buff removal on an AoE MP. Overall, unfortunately, I think the whole kit is very plain, and the only thing that is really, desirable is how good her refund is. In terms of farming, Komachi honestly is pretty solid. As I mentioned before, she has good base refund and the flat charge on top of that, and her damage is honestly not shabby, at least compared to her other AoE caster peers. So in terms of single core quick looping, I can tell you she is still honestly pretty good. As you can see here, when you compare her damage to Alice, the only other AoE SSR quick caster, when they are looping against 3 assassins and not hitting any anti-trait, her damage is quite a bit higher. And of course, Alice and Komachi don't have the same anti-traits. Alice has anti-man in super effective, while Komachi has anti-evil in power mod, but it's not like those are always not overlapping. And also, many times when you're just not considering traits and only considering counterclass, Komachi is a pretty good choice. As you can see here, her refund is also really decent. However, very unfortunately, if you want to run Komachi with double Summer Scotty frontline only, with the 2K4 Mystic Code or any other Mystic Code for that matter, at least I tested everything I can think of. I hope I'm not missing anything, but at least for my testing, no Mystic Code can help her frontline only quick loop against 3 berserkers or assassins when she's not holding any starting charge CE, which is kind of unfortunate because she is a caster. She's only going to be counterclassing berserkers and assassins, and those are the classes that give you the least amount of refund when you hit them. This does put her below Daikokten in terms of being a quick looping caster, but Daikokten's damage is obviously a lot worse because she is of the 4-star rarity instead of 5-star. Usually, I also like to compare loopers with berserkers in terms of damage when they are both counterclassing, because you probably want to at least beat the berserker when you're counterclassing. Otherwise, the berserker is just better than you in every single situation. And as you can see here, I brought up Lohi, which is the best AoE quick debatably right now, and her damage does lose to Komachi by a little bit early on, but then she catches up because she has damage ramp up, and especially on the 3rd wave because we are considering Oberon, and this is not using Black Grail. So if you're using Black Grail, this comparison can change, but in general, they're not that far apart, and even in terms of the nodes that they can loop against, as enemy numbers goes, Lohi isn't that bad because she has an 80 battery, so she can kind of brute force low enemy count nodes as well. So unfortunately, this does not help Komachi in terms of her gameplay relatively. The other thing that hurts Komachi is that her anti-evil niche heavily overlaps with Tonaliko's anti-evil niche, who is the best AoE caster in the game. As you can see here, when they're both looping with no starting charge and just no C equipped in general, but with Oberon, Tonaliko does lose to Komachi by quite a bit early on, but then again she catches up because she can start double stacking her skills with Koyan Light, and on the final wave, because of Oberon, she completely destroys Komachi's damage. And this is when comparing both of them at MP1. Remember, Tonaliko's anti-evil scales with MP levels, so when you start increasing both of their MP levels, the difference is going to be even larger, and at some point, Tonelico is going to be beating Komachi even on the first wave at a higher MP level. And finally, a little interesting thing you can do with Komachi is, of course, her affinity to be paired with Koyan Light and Atlas Mystic Code in loop farming. This obviously only works with frontline only because, you know, Atlas isn't a plug suit, but the basic logic is to use her skill 2, Append 5, Koyan Light, and Atlas, all combined to use her first skill twice on turn 1. This allows her to get 20% flat charge per target she hits with her MP. It's basically the same logic as Saber Alter looping, but she actually still has base refund. So this actually allows her to loop the most weird numbered nodes in the game. So as you can see here, in terms of damage comparisons, it's actually pretty close on the first and second wave. Obviously, you miss out on the burst damage on the third wave because you don't have any offensive buffs on your Atlas Mystic Code, but you obviously trade that for way better refund. If both of them are hitting evil, the damage actually comes even closer because you are double casting Komachi's third skill, which is anti-evil power mod. So instead of just 50%, you have 100%. And finally, when both are hitting anti-man, you actually overtake double Summer Scotty's damage because Koyan Light has that anti-man power mod from her second skill. But of course, again, loses on the third wave because there's no damage burst on your Atlas Mystic Code. The one big problem of this comp is obviously it is quite expensive. You want all of her skills at max level, so the cooldown is at the lowest possible, and you also need her Append 5 unlocked and at least level to 6, so both of her skill 1 and skill 3 can immediately be casted twice on turn 1 with the combination of Koyan Light and Atlas Academy Mystic Code. And obviously, if you want to fully optimize this comp, you have to level her Append 5 to level 10, which honestly, it's not that important to optimize this because usually with this kind of low damage comp, since you're not using plug suit, it's usually just going to be for like free quest farming and whatnot. In terms of challenge quests, unfortunately, I don't think Komachi's kit is unique enough to differentiate herself, and overall just feels pretty dull as a result. Her first skill, the gain charge on quick attack effect, is not nearly as impactful in a challenge quest, and the sure hit on Buster and evade on arts are both super unreliable that I really wouldn't want to bank on them to counter certain boss gimmicks or to block a boss MP. Her skill 3 really needs to hit one of the power mod anti-traits, otherwise she feels even less worth using. The saving grace is perhaps her first and third skills have pretty short cooldowns because of her second skill, but still, 5-turn cooldown isn't like super short. It's how most skills cooldowns are, so overall her skill set is just not very impressive. Maybe you can use her against, you know, death spamming enemies because she has that passive, but otherwise I don't really see it. Her MP, of course, gives her the ability to repeatedly remove buffs from the enemy, but again, as I mentioned when talking about her MP, it is way too slow against most stuff. You have to either preemptively cast them before the boss goes into a phase where they start rapidly buffing themselves with removable buffs, by the way, or, you know, maybe you are fighting against a boss and Komachi can die after debuffing the boss a couple of times, and someone else can come up and still take advantage of these buff removal clocks because they all last for 5 turns. But in most cases, this is not going to be super viable, especially not worth including Komachi in your team specifically just for that one purpose, until we get more boss fights like the most recent Yu Olga Marie quest, where she goes through 30 of your servants throughout the entire boss fight, and Komachi becoming a sacrificial unit actually is viable. I don't really see this MP working out too well for the buff removal, unfortunately. In conclusion, Komachi unfortunately might just be the stinker of the year, which is pretty sad to say because her base performance is honestly not bad, and compared to other AoE casters, you can even say it's extremely solid. Her base refund is good, her damage is good, and she has multiple anti-traits, albeit only one of them is really common on her skill 3. There really isn't much to complain about when you only compare her to other AoE casters. However, unfortunately, because she is a caster DPS, which is naturally undesirable, and because she doesn't have anything in terms of multi-core performance, it's just really hard to compete with some of the better modern AoE servants. And even amongst the caster class, there is one big elephant in the room, Tonalico, who will try to invalidate her with her better version of the anti-evil niche, and of course everything else on top of it that is way better than Komachi. We unfortunately don't live in a time where solid is good enough anymore. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and once again, this is super late. I bet most people don't care about it anymore, but it is still slop content to fill in the gaps before a big announcement probably this weekend during Anime Japan. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.